meet you, dude. How's it going?
Yeah, you too. Good. Yeah. Starting the Saturday off with with a good start. So no complaints.
Nice. So
Yeah.
it's the morning over there with you.
Yep. Just gone 9 a.m. So yeah, in the future.
And is that Auckland, New Zealand?
No, I'm in Sydney.
Sydney. Oh, okay, you're in Australia.
But
All right.
yeah, for now.
Mhm.
Yeah. From like where my wife and I, we're both from New Zealand, and we've spent the last 10 years getting further away, and now we're kind of like slowly going back. So,
Damn.
and with COVID and everything, it's accelerating that even more now. So I think probably sometime next year we'll start heading back to New Zealand.
Wow.
So which will be nice. I definitely miss it.
So that's your native country, or the country you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, born and raised in New Zealand, but I was blessed, I guess you could say, with American citizenship as well. I'm still, especially these days, I'm still trying to figure out if having a US citizenship's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't live there.
Mhm.
But yeah, New Zealand's definitely what I consider home for the most part.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a good place. I recommend it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it seems like a lot of people are making the pilgrimage over there for many different reasons. But how do you feel about that? Is like, are you bothered by it?
I mean, it's a case by case basis, right? Like, if it's like your Peter Thiels or whatever,
Yeah.
then it's like okay, fuck them, And but if it's people who just want a calmer life and are happy to are interested in New Zealand culture and want to contribute to it in a positive way, then yeah, I've no animosity towards that, and thankfully the New Zealand government's been fairly smart in I guess limiting the purchase of real estate if you're not a New Zealand citizen.
Yeah.
So that's helped a lot in terms of reducing some of the slightly rising xenophobia in not only in New Zealand but the rest of the world. But that's definitely helped push that back down in New Zealand. Like, people are less worried about foreign interests now, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
Damn.
By the way, is my accent easy to understand for you? Like, I know sometimes folks will find it difficult, but so I'm always cognizant of that.
It's not too bad at all. I can make it out.
Cool. Oh, good. Yeah, I've lost some of my New Zealand accent over the years, but now that I've been in Australia, I'm kind of getting parts of it back.
Is it like similar accents at all? Like,
yeah,
certain things?
Yeah, for sure. It's like to the uninitiated person, like, the Australian and New Zealand accent is like the Canadian and like American accent, I guess. Even though I would say those are a bit closer, but yeah, Australian accent's like higher pitched, and in my opinion at least, and would often like end a statement or a sentence with like an upwards intonation. Like, that's a really specific thing to know, but it's definitely one thing I've always thought of the Australian accent. But and if you asked me to describe what the New Zealand accent was, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I just know I haven't.
Did you ever watch that show with the two dudes from New Zealand? I forget what it's called.
Flight of the Conchords?
Yeah. Did you ever watch
I watched a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Funny story, back in my university days, I had a friend that it was either himself or a friend of his lived very close to one of those guys' houses in the city Wellington, where they're both from, or they were living at the time at least. And this was kind of just after Flight of the Conchords got big, but one of either my friend or his friend, it's so long ago, like stole lawn furniture from one of their from the front of one of their houses, just as like a dumb, you know, drunken night, you know, in a university town kind of escapade.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my connection to Flight of the Conchords.
Right on.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. Yeah, let's get started then.
Yeah, definitely.
So, where shall we begin? I guess like getting into design.
Yeah.
Or like in university and stuff.
Yeah. So, what you studied media design? Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
And so is that like video and other and sites?
Yeah, it's a strange term. I kind of always struggled to like explain what it meant, because if you see media design and then I tell you or tell someone, they would be like, I didn't get that from media design. And kind of, I think a lot of people could read it and misconstrue it as like advertising or something to do with television, perhaps. Or, you know, I mean, those like that's a pretty obvious connection to try and make, but really what it was kind of this specialization within a new kind of program that the university I went to, which was University of Victoria Wellington, or VUW, I guess. Basically, they had this program called the Bachelor of Design Innovation, which is the wankiest title you could think of. Like, no one wants, like, no pressure. Great, you have to innovate in this degree. And basically what that meant, though, is they wanted to create a program which the things it taught you in the realm of design were less about like it's a trade and we just want to teach you how, like, the principles of graphic design and how to use Photoshop and then send you on your way, or like how to do screen printing and then send you on your way. It was more you know, design and technology are one and the same, and they recognize that, and how can we then construct a program that brings in more aspects of like anthropology and politics and, you know, any parts of society that we think that the university thought I guess design thinking could be applied. So you know, industries that needed to be rethought, their hypothesis for this degree was like design should be a big part of that. And so within that kind of intent, media design was basically how can we use aspects of like computers and computation to create interesting like, I don't want to say experiences because that just sounds like advertising, but like how can we solve problems through computational design, basically. And that's kind of like the high level, and what that kind of boiled down to was a whole slew of teaching folks like aspects, like it was very programming heavy, I'll have to say. So for example, our first year program was like teaching the classic design skill of iteration. You know, you start with an idea, you make 100 different versions of it, and then probably out of that you'll get the winning idea, or, you know, it'll be battle tested, right? So they would do that. They would teach us that through programming. So you start with a simple line of code that draws a circle on the screen, and it's like, okay, what changes can you make to make the circle move, or, you know, duplicate itself, or do whatever. And from that process of like making small incremental changes, you come out, each kind of student would come out with like a completely different end result. You know, whether it be someone totally neglected 2D circles and made 3D spheres and, you know, made some kind of crazy animation or whatever. But again, the whole point was like teaching the principle of iteration through, I guess, like new media is, well, I mean, it's kind of old media at this point, old new media, but
yeah.
but teaching these classic principles through kind of newer forms of technology, I guess, is the best way I could describe it. So
right on.
That's kind of, I guess, why I would never, like, I mean, I literally didn't study it, but I would never consider myself a graphic designer, and that's purely because I just know I don't have the skills to like call myself one, or the confidence, let's say. So I've always gravitated towards design through programming and computers and stuff like that, and creating stuff with non-visual, or creating stuff with code and not just like drawing things in Photoshop and stuff like that.
Now, was the code that you were messing with, was that like HTML? Was that Java?
It was across the whole kind of program, like the degree. It was kind of starting with some basics. So an incredibly popular kind of language and environment language combination that's used in kind of academic contexts is called processing, which was created by I can't remember the two guys' names. I remember their first names, but forgot their last names, so I just won't bother trying. But basically, some MIT either students or like faculty or alumni, and basically it was a kind of I think the website is processing.org, but it's basically a kind of simple programming language, like simplified, I guess, not simple necessarily, but simplified programming language to draw and create graphics. And it's based on Java, which is a fairly common, uses a fairly common like syntax and for its language. So that's what we started with, and then from there, we moved on to, more, I guess, consumer-friendly languages, like you said, like creating stuff on the web with HTML and then JavaScript, and did some more esoteric stuff, like a popular like 3D rendering software. I mean, popular at the time at least, was called Maya, and used to create 3D models, but it also had a API backend or API layer, so that you could actually write code and then execute it, and then the program would just generate 3D models based on the code. You wouldn't have to click and point and sculpt like you would in a normal 3D software. So that was using Python, which was quite interesting. So yeah, a different range of different languages, but really it was all it was never focused on how what the language is about and the computer science principles behind the language. It was more like, this is just a way to facilitate creativity. Which was always nice to just be taught enough to then be dangerous, and not kind of get bogged down in the history of Python came from blah blah blah, and it's just most of us didn't care about that, or if we wanted to know, would go read Wikipedia.
So they made it a point to make sure you guys didn't get married to the technology you're using. This was just the tool in your toolbox.
Absolutely, yeah. Which honestly, I think is that's definitely something, and that's a pretty good way to frame it, and kind of how I approach things today, in terms of what people perhaps sometimes consider design is you're really good at using a piece of software, but design, a lot of the time it's a certain level of consideration for process and research and the thinking behind something, which is why sometimes I'll have engineering colleagues or friends that'll say to me, "Oh, can you teach me how to be good at design?" And it's you kind of already, as an engineer, for example, you already practice elements of that, and often design is mistaught as design is Photoshop, or design is knowing what typography to use, for example, and those are elements of it, but yeah, it's definitely like these are all tools to actually execute on this idea or this intent.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, it wasn't for everyone, and some people definitely in the program wanted more of that traditional, like, teach me an industry, I guess. Which is a fine thing to expect, but I did enjoy the program, how it was so loose and didn't pigeonhole you, and it was just like, here's all this stuff, we're gonna create an environment for you to learn and try and execute on ideas.
Was this like a more rare of a class? I'm stumbling over my words because I'm trying to think of the best way to
Sure.
put it. But
like experimental, you mean?
were there other schools doing the same class, or was there only a few around the world, or whatever?
I would say in New Zealand, at least, I didn't know of too many other, at least at the time, schools that were doing this this kind of style, I guess. The competing university in the same city, which was Massey University, had a lot more of a like a traditional design program. That was more like, having not gone through it, I can't really critique it, obviously, but from the outside, and when I was like looking at what university to apply, it was definitely more like, one is more current, teaching you the skills of current industry, and then the one I ended up going to was like more abstract and conceptual of a style.
Right.
And I think there was already places in Europe and far before it started in New Zealand that were already doing this kind of stuff. Maybe in the United States too, but in the case of New Zealand, it was the first I had heard of. And it just kind of, it felt at the time, as a prospective student, it felt like boundless. It's like, oh, look at all these possibilities, which when you're a university wanting to make money off students, is probably a good selling point.
Yeah. What year was that? The years that you were in university?
That was 2000 and end of 2008, beginning of 2009.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that it was a 1 year course.
3 year course. Yeah.
Okay, that's when you
were. They had a master's program as well, but I by the second year, I was like, yep, I know what I want to do for a job, so I don't want to stay in the academic circles for too long.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So coming out of there, what was it like looking for the next step? Was it?
It wasn't. Yeah. Sorry. Did you want to finish?
No, I was just. It sounded like you had a good idea of what capabilities you had that you didn't want to stick around. You said.
I just knew I wanted, at the time, so this was 2000, when I graduated, it was 20, at the end of 2011, I guess, around about, and I don't know, the iPhone had just come out, or in the last couple of years, and everyone was into apps and new ways of thinking about web technologies and all of that. So I was very much enthralled, for better or worse, in the the notion of I want to make apps and get into that stuff, because again, being in New Zealand, it's it's pretty isolated, not as isolated perhaps as I don't know, some countries, but in terms of technology, while technology kind of proliferates in New Zealand fast, it comes to New Zealand slowly, I guess is the way to describe it. And looking at on the internet at the time and early social media, it's I see everyone in the United States making these cool designs for these cool apps, and I use cool very subjectively, but it was it seemed like the hot thing, and as a young naive designer, it was I want to do that, and I kind of already knew that, like I said, halfway through my studies, and was just keen to kind of wrap it up and get on to, I don't know, it sounds really lame in retrospect, but get on to start making apps and not make a business, but contribute to consumerism kind of thing. Like, you know, I mean, you get bored in like academic circles sometimes, and you kind of just want to get out and start making things happen. So, I mean, I'm sure it's a common feeling many people have. Don't want to be stuck in a dusty lecture hall, you know.
Yeah. So what was the first gig you got then, or was it like a self-initiated project?
So kind of straight out of graduating, I basically actually worked at the university for a little bit, kind of helping with some web-based projects. Like, it wasn't anything I guess portfolio worthy. It was more just like, hey, we got some spare cash and we want something for a class that we're doing. Can you whip something up? So it was a nice, like, little comfy gig, and I already knew the people because most of them were my old lecturers, but through basically my one of my lecturers knew someone at the time who I would very much consider a design hero of mine, who I'm happy, his name's Jared Bishop. He's a designer back in New Zealand. He used to work at an agency called Resin, which is spelled RESN, and they were down the street from the university, and through one thing or another, I just got talking to them, and they had an internship position open, and I got the job basically for a 6-month kind of internship, which is not your traditional internship length, obviously, but they were just like, hey, we need a junior person. You're definitely junior. Why don't you come in and you'll do a combination of wallpaper, our studio, and write JavaScript and do some design in Photoshop, and get paid to do it, which is the nice thing, obviously. So I just said hell yes and did that for 6 months. And kind of at the time that was happening, I had started having some discussions with Facebook at the time as well. So, knowing that this internship might not be a constant thing, and so I was still on the lookout for like other positions, whether they're in New Zealand or if I really got lucky elsewhere in the world. But yeah, the conversation with Facebook purely came through honestly just following someone on Twitter. Wow. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. I had followed this designer, his name's Rasmus Anderson, and he took, I guess the best way I could describe it is, took pity on me. He had saw I was a recent graduate. He knew that Facebook was hiring. He was working there at the time, and basically all he said was like, hey, we're applying, or we're accepting applicants. If you have a portfolio, put it on the pile, and maybe you'll get lucky, kind of thing. And I can't remember how much time it took to hear back from them, but eventually I got a offer to interview, and about 6 months later, after starting that process, around the time when I was wrapping up at Resin, I then got an offer to basically move to California and join the team.
Wow.
At Facebook. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's I guess we're talking at the beginning of the call, like, about citizenship and things like that. Yeah. This is purely one of those situations where and one, obviously I feel very fortunate position to be in, but I wouldn't have gotten the job had I not had a United States citizenship. And they had actually rejected me, and then by on the virtue of visa grounds, like, hey, we can't get any more visas, so sorry, we have to like cut things off. And then I said, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen, And literally like a week or so later, they came back and said, "Oh, here's an offer.
Wow.
Like, because you can just come into the country and start working."
That's crazy.
And yeah, so that was a really powerful poignant reminder of how powerful and privileged it is, I guess, to have a United States citizenship under certain circumstances. So that definitely helped kind of, I guess, begin my expedition outside of New Zealand and working in, I guess, in the design industry as eventually, I guess you could say, a professional or a career designer.
Yeah, you get offered to move across the globe for it. That's pretty substantial,
Yeah. And with everything, especially these days that you hear in the media and reporting regarding like Facebook and its practices and things like that, I would definitely say that my tenure at Facebook, I'm glad it wasn't incredibly long, and one of the reasons it wasn't incredibly long was because I definitely could say I didn't have the best experience. And that wasn't necessarily the company as a whole, but very specific people or interactions made me realize, I guess, oh, this isn't the place I want to work for the rest of my life, kind of thing. Right. It's like, what purpose am I serving here? I'm not really sure what that is, and I want to spend my time doing something a lot more. I guess designers want to do things that feel at times, I guess, quite objective, right? Mm-hmm. So you have some kind of signal that what I'm doing matters, or what I'm doing actually. If I'm making a product for a customer, as an example, I want to know that person is actually empowered by their use of it. Whereas with a product like Facebook, especially as we see it today, like you don't know who it's serving and what its purpose is, and that's proving to be a dangerous thing. So it was definitely a very formative experience as a junior designer, and very much a junior designer. I was never I went into that situation really not knowing what to expect and what it meant to be a designer at a tech company or in tech or anything like that. And it definitely it taught me very quickly what I liked doing, what I didn't like doing, and what I was really bad at. So for better or for worse, it was a very formative time to kind of I guess fast track my principles as a designer, I guess, like you could say. Like I soon learned what I liked, didn't like, and what felt worth doing in life.
Right. Now, were they because you went to school for something that was not quite broad scope, was that one of the reasons that they were like, they're on the cutting edge of what's going on, so they're like, we need to pull in these people that have this kind of education, a little bit more abstract education?
I don't think so necessarily. I mean, it could have been. It wasn't ever made aware to me, because honestly, a lot of my colleagues at the time, it wasn't that long ago, but mind you, back in 2000, like between 2010 and 2012, the concept of like a digital product designer or something like that was like still quite a foreign or not foreign, like infantile concept, I guess. Like digital products and the digital industry was still kind of growing and forming compared to what it is today. And so a lot of my colleagues did actually have more of a traditional like graphic design or communication design background, and not explicitly like involved in programming and stuff like that. At least, generalization, but that's kind of what I remember. So no, I think it was more the opposite, and that's what I thought Facebook would be like an interesting thing because of this technology I was into, but I don't think at the end of the day that was necessarily true.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At the end of the day, it's still a business that wants to make millions of dollars, and you know, is, as we've seen, is going to try to do whatever it takes, irrespective of like cool technology.
Yeah.
So.
Damn. So.
Yeah.
Were you there when they bought Instagram then?
Yes,
Wow.
I had just joined, I think. Yeah, it was around the time I just joined.
Wow.
And yeah, it was an interesting time. I mean, this is how, like, I hadn't ever owned like any kind of, not that they were prolific back then, but I had never owned a smartphone or any kind of like high tech device like that until I had moved to United States and started working in Silicon Valley. Like, you know, I had some old busted up MacBook Pro that I had carried through me all the way through university, but I'd never known about like despite my, I guess, interest in like making apps and digital products and stuff, I'd never owned an iPhone or, you know, barely used one, and so I didn't even know what Instagram was at the time. Like, that's how out of it I was. But you know, sure know now what it is, and
wow.
Yeah, it was a yeah. I can't. I mean, I have really no knowledge on whether Instagram was a good thing to buy or a bad thing, or, you know, whether it's a good product or not. I mean, I don't to this day. I still don't really use it. I don't have an account or anything, but yeah, it was definitely a controversial topic within the company, I would say. Like when I joined, yeah, they just bought Instagram or were going through the purchase, and then when I left, they had just bought Oculus, I think. So yeah, kind of bookended two large, equally controversial acquisitions, I would say.
Wow.
Not that I really have a strong opinion about either. That was just how it ended up.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
So yeah, interesting.
So when you left there, did you stay in America, or is that when you went to Japan, or?
Yeah, I stayed for about a year. Basically, I worked at a New Zealand company, actually, in San Francisco for about a year. It's called Xero, which is spelled with an X, so Xero, and it's basically, you know, it's a big deal in New Zealand. It's basically web-based accounting software. Is like your, I don't know what's big in America, like QuickBooks or something like that, like Intuit's stuff, and it's really, I don't know, maybe it sounds kind of sad to say this, but like I kind of wanted to work on a product like that is maybe considered boring because of how, at least as a product that is used by like small businesses, it felt really objective. It was like a hard swing in like the objective towards objectivity in terms of like businesses need this to do very specific things, and you're gonna know, at least in comparison to a social media product, you're going to know whether these customers are feeling like they're achieving things based on what your product is doing for them. So that was honestly as far as my thought process went when joining a company like that. And it was a great time to work there. And you know, didn't last too long because, yeah, like you said, basically from that, like, you know, after a year or so there, we moved to Japan, and you know, Xero doesn't exist in Asia, or at least didn't at the time, so it was goodbye to that. But yeah, it was a nice little stint to work for a New Zealand company.
Did you have enough of Cali? You were just over it at that point?
Yeah. I don't, like, this is a weird thing to say, but in total in my life, I maybe have spent like a total of 5 years in the United States, like overall, because I lived there when I was very young for a couple of years, and whether it's California or other places, I could never feel at home. Despite even being a legal citizen, it just never felt like home. And you know, aspects of American culture I could just never get into. Like, for example, when I was first moved to the United States, I think this was around the time of like Obama Romney election. Like I can't even remember if it was Obama and someone. And I mean, as we're seeing today, politics is a huge issue in the United States for a lot of I think important reasons. And being in New Zealand, where we have politics, but it's kind of like it doesn't dominate everything, I guess. Yeah. I mean, also New Zealand has a more centrist like political spectrum, so like maybe less divisive. But everyone in the United States at the time was talking about the election and its importance, and obviously it's important when you have your first I guess presidential candidate who's African American and what have you. But I was just like, I didn't have any opinion about it because I didn't consider myself, I guess, American, and that's like a good example. And when people ask me like, oh, what's your opinion, like you got to pick a side in this political debate or whatever, and I was like, I don't know, like I can have superficial opinions, but I don't know. And like that's like I guess an example of like I was just kind of totally outside of the American kind of bubble or cultural bubble, I guess, and that was definitely something that I always struggled with when living there. It's just like I couldn't really get into it. It was I ultimately it was kind of like one reason why I decided to leave. And I mean, again, I had the privilege and the ability to be able to leave, being a dual citizen. So I mean, I was very fortunate in that case. But yeah, I considered myself an American for all legal reasons, but none of the cultural reasons. So yeah, I had enough. I mean, as beautiful as California is, I had enough of just the whole American package at the time. I could say, but and yeah, it was kind of time to move on and try something completely different and literally foreign to myself, like Japan.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of it was a very snap decision. Basically, my fiance at the time was living outside of the United States, and I was living there, and we were just like, this sucks being apart. Let's pick a place and go. And she was fortunate enough to get a job transfer to Tokyo and sent me a DM one day and was like, I got the job, I'm moving, I'll see you there. And so now my task was to figure out how to get to Japan.
Jeez, that's intense.
Yeah. But yeah, after a couple months of just applying at jobs and talking to some people I knew over there, eventually landed a job at a small startup. And I wasn't moving there to find an amazing startup or it wasn't like a career opportunity move. Obviously, it was like, let's just do something completely different, immerse ourselves again in completely literally foreign and different culture in comparison to the United States, and experience what it's like being I guess a guest in a foreign country, right? Especially in terms of like an Asian country in comparison to a Western country. So,
yeah.
It was a really wonderful experience, honestly.
Yeah. And how long were you in Japan for?
Just about 3 years. About the same amount of time I was in the United States the second time around. So, pretty decent amount of time.
Definitely.
And it was kind of enough time for us to like realize that, because in that time, we got married, and obviously the next step after that is like you want to maybe start thinking about doing more things related to domestic life, buying a house or what have you. And Japan, as great as a country it is, has a system that will, you know, it always works against foreigners in many ways. Whether that's just, you know, like cultural disapproval or systemic, like, you know, kind of problems and stuff like that. But it was just it's like you really want to live there for a strong reason if you want to put down roots. And, you know, that's obviously easy if you're, you know, married to someone who's Japanese, or is like, or yourself is completely fluent in Japanese, which, you know, myself and my wife were not, but we knew enough to like live and go through daily life. But yeah, it was never like a long-term thing, because it's extra stress that we didn't need. You know. So that was ultimately why we decided to leave and come back to the Southern Hemisphere.
Right on.
Yeah.
And that's when you made the move to Australia?
Yeah, and that was really the only real strong reason we had for that, was like we just weren't ready to go back to New Zealand. It felt like, you know, going from living in one of the most densely populated cities like Tokyo, and then moving to, like, you know, a small to mid-sized city in New Zealand, it would, you know, I feel like if you do that, you might get depressed if you're not careful, because you're just going from like one potential extreme to another. So, you know, Australia was like, you know, as New Zealand citizens, we can live here, like without any additional visa.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, it just made it like a very easy choice. So yeah.
Did you have to start the job search all over again?
We were fortunate enough to actually be able to keep our jobs by virtue of the companies that we worked for at the time. Both had offices here. So with a little bit of negotiation, we were able to basically move here and not have to change our employment, which, I mean, change it a little bit, but yeah, we worked on the same things for the same people. So that was definitely a driver in the decision to kind of move to Australia first as opposed to New Zealand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you guys in the dense area of Australia?
Yeah, we're right in the middle of Sydney. You know, we not too far from I guess downtown, but still in some suburbs. But yeah, I'm unfortunately I really don't know much about Australia, despite living so close to it for so long in New Zealand. And this is honestly my first time, like, other than coming once for like a Christmas holiday, this is my first time living it, like being in Australia for any extended period of time. So everything's very new to me, and the like learning the differences between the culture and stuff like that, even though so similar to New Zealand but also so different.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good though. I've definitely enjoyed it. And you know, Sydney's an okay city. It's I mean, I'm sure people that were born and raised here will have opinions that contrast this, but I mean, for me, at least Sydney anyway, it feels like just one of those Western cities that's like any other Western city, you know. It's like, it's very I mean, compared to other cities in Australia, Sydney probably has the least like culture, I guess you could say, or like unique vibes, if that's, you know, not a technical term, but
like a little more touristy.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's kind of Sydney's like a finance center, and you know, New South Wales is like, I guess the most populous state in Australia. So, you know, with Sydney being, I think Sydney's the capital of New South Wales, but I mean, it's the biggest city in the state. So, you know, it's central for a lot of the economy here. So
right, that makes sense.
Because of that, I think there's not a lot of room for like some aspects of like more interesting culture, you could say. But you know, again, I'm sure I'm sure people that were born and raised here will have stronger opinions on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
How's the food there?
It's good. If you actually, that's one thing about it that was really nice, in that there's you know, I mean, myself and my wife, we love Asian food. I mean, obviously living in Asia will do that to you, and there's a lot of good variety of food here. You know, there's a lot of good I guess kind of home cooked Chinese food, or traditional Chinese food, and like, you know, Korean food as well, and you know, Japanese if you look hard enough. So yeah, no, it's great. It's a, you know, again, it's not a bad city by any means. It has a lot of good stuff, but and food is one of them. But yeah, it's like, it's, you know, it's just a city. It's like, you know, some cities are like, you know, it's got this arty vibe, or it's got this like, you know, it's a university town, so it's like big into sports or something. But like Sydney, I'm just like, it's just a city.
Right on. You mentioned you kind of got into school right when the iPhone was coming out. And I kind of threw this idea past you about like the push for mobile, and I after I had asked you to be on the podcast, I found myself on some kind of mobile site, and it was just like I could not zoom out and just see where I need to, what information I needed to go to. I had to keep scrolling through full screen stuff and Xing out these full screen ads, and it just made me think about like maybe we pushed too hard to go mobile. Like, is there any ergonomics really to holding your phone? Like, we pushed everything to be here, but we didn't really think about why it needed to be here, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting topic. And I mean, it's this, like, my mind, like, when thinking on the topic, my mind kind of gravitates towards like so much of, I mean, looking at it at the lens that we have now, as opposed to like, you know, when the iPhone was first released, like everything regarding mobile has been honed for like some form of engagement, right? Like it's kind of, you know, the original pitch for the iPhone, it's like, you know, whatever Steve Jobs said, he was like, it's a web browser, it's your email app, it's a phone, and you can like, it was very utilitarian, right? And now it's just like, now these devices are like entertainment portals for clicks and eyeballs and stuff like that, right? So I think there is a negativity that can be seen in like a lot of the design patterns and interactions and stuff that are created for, you know, I guess in this case, like experiencing content on a mobile device these days. And yeah, a lot of them have been both driven and like innovated on because people want other people to be engaged so they can earn money. Right. Like, you know, it's kind of it's a bit of a bummer of a statement, but like I feel like some of that is like there's some truth to that, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of you know, more, I guess, more neutral aspects of mobile technology that are quite interesting. For example, you know, because of mobile technology, I think in the consciousness there's been more discussion about like peer-to-peer communication, which is like not explicitly a design topic, but like in terms of technology and people thinking about it more. You know, if everyone has some kind of device on them, there's potential more opportunity for you know, more secure or peer-to-peer and theoretically more secure communication that's not like centralized, right? You know, which, you know, is quite an interesting topic in the tech and design communities. But so, you know, that it's obviously it's not prolific at the moment, even though it is possible, because there's no way to monetize it, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why we don't hear a lot about it, and everyone wants to keep you focused on a Facebook or a YouTube or a Netflix or whatever. But there definitely are positives that I think are coming about in perhaps not so much behind the scenes, but just getting are not as apparent that are happening because of mobile technology.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a positive technological leap, but it's often suppressed by mainstream use cases.
Right. Yeah, it's like everybody's married to this what's it called, something model, like advertising model, as like the way to go about doing it, when there's other ways to go about it. Like sometimes you just build something that's really cool and useful, and that's why people gravitate towards it too,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like I see a lot of people kind of my age, which is like around 30 or what have you, kind of think back to, I mean, even older people, honestly, think back to like, someone said a while ago, I can't remember where I saw it, probably Twitter, and someone was like, remember when Dropbox was just like this unintrusive thing that sits on your desktop and like you can store files, and it just it sits there out of the way, and you don't think about it. And now, like, if you try and install Dropbox, I'm sure on your computer, it's like this real lengthy kind of optimized, like, for some kind of metric, company based metric, to get you to do something, to engage with something, and Dropbox as a company now is very much more of a, like, we want to be Google Docs or like, Microsoft Word, or, some kind of larger productivity thing, right? Which, that's what happens to companies. They scale, but like that idea of like, remember we just had this simple thing and it did one thing, and it was nice, and we didn't have to think about it, and we weren't worried if it was going to like leak our information to the NSA or something. I think there's definitely there's becoming more of a like a nostalgia for that stuff, which is then kind of re-influencing like some of the new things that are coming out. And yeah, it's almost like this renaissance to like, want to go back to I guess renaissance is the wrong word, but like this pull for nostalgia that is actually like turning us away from like where we're at right now, because we're like, oh no, we've gone too far in one direction. We should kind of move back to a more simplified use of technology. For our benefit.
I have an idea I want to bounce off you. I've been brain thinking.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so I just watched the iOS 14 had came out recently, the past week or so, and then I watched The Social Dilemma, all within about a 2-week span of each other.
Yep.
And I had a brain fart in my head that Apple and Android, depending, I don't know how their attitudes are, but I could see, especially Apple, looking at these social media platforms as like barnacles on their ship, like everybody's talking shit on looking at your phone, but realistically it's these kind of parasitic algorithms more so than it is, like the phone itself is actually crazy useful, like the technology's awesome. It's this crap where like, showing you stuff that you don't really even want to see or you already saw. You're like, come on. So like my idea was, what if, like, so with the new iOS 14 update, you can have messages pinned at the top with the circles. As soon as I saw those circles, I was like, it feels like all Apple has to do is flick a button, and then those turn into stories, and then we don't even have to deal with Instagram anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's in a way, that's kind of Apple's business model. and it's similar to Facebook's. I'll have to admit, like, I mean, or any big company, right? Is like you see, you're a platform, like an Apple, or who owns the iPhone, and the iPhone is the platform, and you have, uh, you know, smart people building products for that platform, like an Instagram or a Facebook, or or what have you. And then as the platform owner, or you can then kind of cherry pick the interesting parts of what those other people are making, and then make it the core of your own operating system, for example, right? So, it's a pretty common strategy, I guess. I mean, even Android's done it to it. Because in the recent years I've switched over to Android just to try something different, and it's been similar. Like, I've seen stuff that has been popularized by certain social media products or apps, or any kind of app, really, and it's like, wow, I remember when I saw this back in this app, and now it's like either a design or an interaction pattern that is just baked into the operating system. So that's, I guess, the blessing and the curse of developing something for someone else's platform, is that it's cool that you can influence a wider change on the operating system, but they're also going to steal your idea
if they're smart about it. Yeah. Do you think that'll? But, I guess that's you're saying that's possibly where the future goes.
I would think so. I mean, like, this is it's an interesting, like, this is, I don't know, this is a very cynical take of mine when it comes to like your Apples and your Googles and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I guess especially Apple. And I don't really have a strong opinion about their products. Like, they're popular and good, and I'm not against that or debating it. But one thing my cynical brain tells me is, like, Apple is very big. Not that this is new, but even more so these days, they're very big on privacy and making sure your data is yours, and Apple is there for you, the customer, and all that kind of stuff. And this is like the most cynicalist, like, take I could have as, like, an old, not old, but, like, a grumpy white guy, is that like, their push for privacy and things like that is purely for their commercial benefit. I mean, they can be absolutely truthful in their aim to want to protect people's data and ensure that who, like, I don't know who, like, TSA or ICE or whatever problematic American agency wants to get a hold of your data on your device. Like, they're like, no, we're gonna put in measures to, like, make, like, at least outwardly, you don't know really what happens in the background, but a lot of their marketing and culture of their products is built around, like, we're safe, we're doing this for you, like, please trust us. And companies change. And Apple is one of those companies that have changed the least in terms of their principles, which is great. But I always look at that stuff and I'm just like, is what's best, the devil or like, is it better to know, oh yeah, these people are using my data and I can then make the decision on whether I want to give it to them or not? Or you trust a company that tells you they're not using your data, and then, oops, here's some investigative journalist that figures out they actually are using it in a way that they said they weren't. Like, and I have no reason to believe that Apple are doing that, but I think it's a thought that many people don't have this day and age. They're just like, this company's the good guys, and they would never do anything bad to hurt me, the customer.
Right.
And it's like, well, they're a massive company that is trying to make even more money. At the end of the day.
Do you think that with maybe everybody kind of taking a step back at things, do you think maybe, like, websites that charge you to look at their articles I think I might even tweeted about this. Like, if you're gonna sell my information, whatever information you're scraping, be it as much as it may be, however big or small it is, like, is that not enough? Do I really gotta pay you guys $4, $5 this month to look at this one article I wanted to see? You know?
Yeah. Like explicitly with like journalism and stuff like that. You mean? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
It's the advertising model itself. It's like this seems clunky now.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like when you look at a reputable news source, I mean, or any news source, like you're always kind of holding your breath, being like, is there going to be a pop up? Is there going to be a pop up?
Yeah.
Can I actually can I read this article or not?
Yeah.
Or can I only read half of it?
Right.
And I'm honestly not sure like what the best answer is there. Like at the end of the day, I think it's important for like news, and especially reputable and vetted news, to not to be available as much as possible to the public, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you go to a website, there's a paywall, and to read some, I don't know, New York Times article, for example, I don't know if they have a paywall, but like that's like depending on what the article is, whether it's opinion or an investigative piece, like that's potential information someone wants to learn about that is now locked, right? Whereas with older technology, you could essentially go to your library and just read the paper without buying it, and or something, right? And no one's blocking you and asking you to pay. So I understand that, like putting ads and stuff and selling data, like, or potentially selling people's data through advertising, like there's, I guess, a positivity to it, only because it makes the information available and not hidden behind an additional payment. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting kind of dilemma in a way, because obviously you want journalists who are doing great work to be paid and to ensure that they're continuing to do great work. But I mean, I'm sure those journalists also want the work that they're doing to actually be seen by people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's the point of doing some investigative report when no one sees it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it's a mix of, again, it's a mix of these companies. I mean, a newspaper is a business, and they have, I assume, shareholders or certain targets or some kind of numbers they need to meet, and a combination of doing the classic subscription model, which you'd get with your old school Sunday or weekly paper or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, I'm sure they're just trying to find, like, what's the good middle ground. And for the consumer, at the end of the day, I think we're only seeing the negative impact of just like, this thing is freely accessible. It's like, it feels like more effort, given how easy it is to find articles and news. It feels like more effort to pay for a subscription at a paywall than it would, I guess, back in the day of like signing up for a newspaper and then having them trickle in or something. Like, I don't know, like there's a mental model there that it feels like more work to pay for this article that I got to so easily. But yeah, I don't know. It's an industry I know very little about.
It's just thinking of I don't know, man. I went to school for graphic design, but I find myself super interested in the technology side of stuff and how things work, because one of the things I had to do was I worked for it was like a steakhouse, kind of like bar brew pub, and it was very local to my state, and they had like 12 or 13 different locations, and they had Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts for all of these locations. And they all do things slightly differently on different nights. And they all have placemats that have all of the information of everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so like, I had like 2 fonts, one photo of each food item,
Yeah.
and red, white, and blue were the colors, and that was, and I had to come up with new stuff over, and it was, for me it was just like, I think I like graphic design, but whatever this isn't it for me. Like.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like, I think all designers like to say, optimistically, that their work is problem solving, right? Like,
right.
Whether it's like traditional graphic design, your problem is communicating something clearly, or if it's making a digital product or app or something, it's like, also still communicating it clearly, but then you have to like make it easy to use and things like that. And
right.
yeah, I mean, in that case, right, like I've been in situations where I've had to do stuff like that, and it's I mean, design's a job at the end of the day, and sometimes jobs suck, but like, you even in a case like that, you're like trying to squeeze out some drop of like objectivity to like help you get through this, right?
Yeah.
Right. And this is like, I think the other side of it is like, even if there is some objectivity there, at the end of the day, you have to care about it, right? Like, it's not like the problem with the design being a job, I think, is it's also not particularly, it's not mindless. Like, like we've all stacked shelves somewhere at a supermarket somewhere in our lives, I'm sure, and it's like, you can kind of detach from that in a way, because it's very, it's not dynamic. It's like I stack shelves and then the shelves empty and then I stack shelves again, whereas design, it's like, not only are you going to be judged subjectively on the work that you do, but you're also trying to like find the constraints within the problem to actually create the solution. And if you don't care about anything you're doing regarding the problem, then it's like I just can't think, I can't be creative here. Like,
right.
I think that's really the, like, when we've been in situations like that, I think that's where, like, why we hit a wall.
That's what makes me think that in the future, that's where somebody smart enough is going to figure out how to implement somebody's style guides, like use a style guide kind of like as your algorithm. So like, okay, here's 500 versions of all you can eat wings. You guys pick it. The computer did it for you. You didn't need a human to do that part, like.
I mean, honestly, I would love to see some kind of like. So you've heard of hopefully I get it right. Is it GPT-3? There's a generative, there's some machine learning kind of algorithm that's gotten real popular on social media. That's, I think it's called GTP3, and it's basically allowing people to do all sorts of different types of processing with textual content, like text and stuff. So someone trained a GPT-3 model to basically write JavaScript. Based on a pure, like a natural language sentence. So you could type out, I want to make the button, I want to make the green button clickable, and then it will just render output the JavaScript code that equates to a green button that's clickable, and it actually works too.
Wow.
And someone also used GTP3 for like design as well. So like I want to make a website with centered text that uses Helvetica or something, and it would just like, I mean, often it would never make anything that's great or like useful, but it still makes it like.
Wow. It's like asking Siri to do your design work.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's and because of that, I think there's been some discussions recently in the tech industry of just like, are we gonna get, like, are we gonna start feeling like, I don't know, like a truck driver or a coal miner, where it's like our industry is either like no longer gonna be existing, or we're gonna be pushed out by robots or something, right?
Yeah.
Which, I think, for better or for worse, is, I don't know. For me, it's just like, heat death of the universe. It's like it's gonna come. We just need to like know how to adapt to it, and
right.
You know, if my job becomes irrelevant, there'll be new things enabled because of my job now being irrelevant, right?
Yes.
And one thing I'll actually share, like based on your interest in like generative design and stuff like that, there's a designer or a couple of designers I follow that I think they're based across the US and Europe, but trying to find their names. One of their names is Adam Morse. I remember, but the website is components.ai, and basically I think it's a company of theirs, but they're basically trying to figure out new experimental ways using GTP3 and other things to actually create UI and like layouts and stuff like that using generative technologies.
Okay. I think I just stumbled across this stuff this past week.
Really? Okay.
Does this dude have a podcast? And did he interview Larry Sistrom from the guy that co-created?
I mean, designers are known to have podcasts, so that's highly.
A lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he had Larry on, and he was talking about that. Is it CPT3?
GTP3, yeah.
GT.
Yeah.
Because he uses it for his site. It's called rt.live, and I guess it's some kind of like COVID tracking thing. He's like, I'm not trying to predict the future. I'm just trying to report what actually happened correctly. That sounds gnarly.
Yeah.
Like this sounds like
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff are you up to these days? Are you
kind of, I'd say trying my best to take it easy, while kind of everything on the world stage kind of sorts itself out. I guess.
Right, yeah.
I will say that I'm preparing to go next month. I'm preparing to go vote at both for the election in New Zealand and the United States. So that's going to be a fun month. Reading up on, at least in the case of the New Zealand, I got to read up on a couple of policies. But no, really, I mean, more seriously, it's just like, COVID and the whole situation. It's really, I think for a lot of people, obviously a lot of people are kind of put in positions they would rather not be in because of the current situation. But either way, it's really, I think, reprioritized for a lot of people what matters in life. And, not that I had really thought this way for a long time, especially since leaving the United States, but I've been totally out of this, mentality of like design as a career in terms of like growth and like, I've got to always be going up the next level of the design ladder. And, I don't know if like you can really seriously say like becoming some kind of thought leader in design is like a realistic goal or a positive goal to even try and achieve. But like, I'm definitely like, for whatever part of me used to think that was what one should do, it's definitely not that now.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
I saw you, I don't know if you posted it or retweeted it, something about like people putting their whole personality as design. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think now, more now than ever, it's like it's important to like not take design too seriously in regards to I don't know, this. I think like the work that we do as designers, I think, is important, but there's a lot of thinking that comes out of the design industry in that, like, oh, this thing failed because it didn't have good design, or it didn't think about design or something, right? Like I saw I was thinking about this morning because I knew it would probably come up. That I think at the start of the pandemic, there was an article in like Fast Co Design. Like I think that's the name of the blog if I remember. And it was like, this was at the cusp of like the outbreak in China and everything, and it was like, 7 lessons design thinking could help, or 7 lessons on how design thinking could help the pandemic. And it's like, you kind of look at that article now after the last 6 months, and you're like, that's like the most wankiest, right. Like up its own ass, like kind of way of thinking. And it's like, yes, there are sure like ways that design thinking can research some different industries or some ways to solve a problem, but it's like, I think there's a problem with design that it and this is a generalization, so I hope no one takes offense to it, but like we consider ourselves incredibly self-important as designers, especially in the tech industry, and it's like, there's a lot of smart people that are probably actually good designers that don't consider themselves designers in industries that many designers will never be a part of, and so for myself, like, this is probably a natural progression as one gets older, but it's just like, I'm going to be I'm less kind of obsessed with like design as this religion that needs to be evangelized, and because there are so many other people that are uninformed and I have to make them informed somehow. It's just like, design is like, it's a thing that can help a lot of people and a lot of industries, but it's not the end all be all of a solution, and both as an industry and both as like individually, like, always thinking about I don't know how I can influence a project as a designer, and like it's all up to me because I have the skills and no one else. Like that kind of thinking can become common in design industry, and it's just like, I've taken over the last like 5 years a good step back, and I'm just like, I'm not worried about how much influence I have anymore. I just want to make sure from my position of influence within a project or a community or what have you, that I do right by the people I'm working with and leave it at that. It's not like it's not a situation where design always has to win. Right. You know what I mean? So that's, I guess, a long way of saying like I've definitely become adverse to like or distancing myself from like what design is, and just knowing it's a methodology, but knowing it's also not the end all be all of everything. And right. As designers, the more we actually realize that design is about synthesis and learning a lot of things about the world and society and things that aren't insular to design, that's actually when we become better designers, is like our ability to understand and empathize with the world around us. So the more you can distance yourself from design explicitly, I think the better you'll be.
Cool. What kind of projects are you currently working on, if you're allowed to share?
I mean, right now, on like, in terms of where I work and what I do these days, like, I guess job-wise, I work for a startup called Rainforest that basically makes some software that can help automate, I guess, testing of software. So it's like we make an application that helps you test applications. Right. Is the best way I can describe it. Which is like, it's quite an interesting technical problem, and the company itself is completely remote, so we don't have an office, and we have people, basically, in Asia Pacific, in North America, in Europe. So it's a pretty fast spread out company, which makes it pretty interesting. But then on the side, I mean, I'm always kind of digging into programming and learning new skill sets when it comes to like creating things on the web and things like that. I mentioned that components.ai stuff. Like, that's the kind of, I'm not doing anything close to that, but like, that's the kind of stuff I love reading about and learning about. And just harnessing technology and the openness of the web to like try new things. And I mean, I will say one thing I've been thinking about lately, in talking with, the friends and stuff like that, is like building more tools for, I guess, collaboration on the web is like, I think that's like, I mean, you can see it now, these days, like with COVID and people, maybe more people working remotely, like the use of like the need for collaboration and easy collaboration across the web is becoming a more and more sought after thing. So it's definitely a it's been top of mind of myself and in terms of learning about the space and thinking about ideas that could help contribute to making collaboration easier. But it's all just like messing around and playing with ideas, nothing real serious. So
cool.
Yeah, just keeps the brain active,
Yeah. You started or not started, but a while back you created an account. I think it was a Twitter account that just would post like products. Was that like an algorithm based thing, or were you posting those manually?
That was just me. That was just me posting it manually. It's like the interesting thing about Twitter, and there are a few positive things these days to say about Twitter, I feel like, but you can kind of like use it for whatever you want in a way, which makes it quite like a blessing and a curse, I guess. And like, it's cool that you can kind of just create a new Twitter account, and it's like, this is a themed Twitter account, and you have the like, what is it, We Rate Dogs Twitter account, or like kind of meme accounts like that. But you could also just make it like, oh, this is just a list of stuff that I like, and I'm just gonna post it as this curated list, and if people want to subscribe to it, like follow it, they can, And I actually did that on my own personal Twitter for some time. I've just had a continuously growing thread of music, and I would just like always reply to my own tweet for like whatever song I was listening to, and it made a list, like it made a Twitter thread that was so long it spanned like 3 years or something.
Holy shit.
That Twitter just refused to render all of it.
Wow.
It was just like, we're not going to bother like figuring out what order this is all in, because our algorithms fucked it up anyway. But that's a cool thing you can use Twitter for, right? It's like, oh, I just have an interest or a topic of something I want to share, and there's ways to like compartmentalize that and share it openly with people. So I was never smart enough to make some kind of algorithmically based like product sharing thing. I mean, wow. I'm sure it's possible, but no, it's sounds like hard work.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about Twitter when it first started was like, it was the group chat, because there was no group chat,
Yeah.
So me working at the grocery store and my other buddy in San Diego that's working at Walmart, we can all bitch about our jobs together, and that was like the fun part of it. And then the other part, at the same time that I enjoyed that part, the other part I enjoyed was the SMS capabilities. So like, I don't have to look at a news feed and get bombarded. I could just maybe say what I want to say, and then that's it, drop it. So with the new iOS update, there's like, shortcuts. So like, when I'll tap on this button, so the first thing, like my phone goes off, changes these settings, starts playing music, and I was like, it can send text. Cool, I'm gonna have it send a text to Twitter just cause I want to see if this automation will work.
Oh, right, yeah. And it works?
No, Twitter apparently had stopped the SMS thing like years ago.
Oh man, that's a bummer.
To me, I thought that was the strongest part about Twitter, because it gave a lot of like maybe underdeveloped countries a chance to really pop off and be like, yo, there's something not cool happening right now. And like, they didn't need Wi-Fi to do it.
Yeah.
But
that's interesting. Like SMS, I think, like it's almost like I don't know. I don't know how prolific it is still, like in like the rest of the world. I mean, I do know like 10 years ago, I would hear things like, you know, in certain countries where you have a lot of like countries in Africa where you have a lot of remote communities or remote farming communities or whatever. SMS was actually incredibly powerful for stuff like banking, or transferring of money because
Wow.
It's you wanna buy something to have delivered to your remote farm or whatever. You can't send them cash. You don't have maybe like you have a credit card, but you don't have a web browser. Like you have a bank and you have SMS. You can maybe just set up a direct transfer, or a wire transfer using your phone and texting. And
wow.
like I don't know if it's still a thing, but that was I definitely had heard of technology like that. And yeah, I don't know. SMS is like one of those interesting things. Like could there be like a revival of SMS just because every phone doesn't not have SMS. Like
right, exactly.
you might have to pay for it differently, like depending on your service provider, but like all phones support SMS.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to build an app. You just like build the server, right? It's kind of an interesting technology.
Yeah, it's super broad.
Yeah. Maybe that's an idea for you to start working on.
Shit. Dude.
Yeah.
I know. I got to figure something out over here. I'm stitching my face off, sewing a bunch of things.
Oh yeah, man. I wanted to take a moment too to just say, like, I mean, we've been kind of like passively, I guess, following each other for like a number of years now. Like I don't know how long we've kind of been talking on and off on Twitter. Like it could be 10 years for all I know, but it's probably like 5 or 6 or something. But I gotta say, like you're like, I don't know whether you call it your business or it's just like a side thing, or however you think about it, but like it's always really impressive and like motivating to see like this little I guess brand of sorts that you've developed, and how good it looks, and I mean I haven't tried any of the products obviously, but how it looks and feels, but it has this great like homegrown vibe about it that you just like you just love to see, and
right.
And yeah, I think it's like for myself, people might look at oh wow, you worked at this tech company or you lived in this country, like that's one experience, but I see folks like yourself who just have this nice like slow little thing they're working on, and it's very crafted and cultivated, and like I find that stuff incredibly impressive. So I did want to take a moment to say, like, for whatever you might think about it, like I see the stuff you're doing and I'm like, this is like, it's so pure, and it's really nice to see.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Cool.
So
yeah. You've been super generous with your time, man. I really appreciate you being able to sit down and chat with me.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, Saturday morning, it's either do this or like clean my living room. So,
yeah, you're coming at me from the future over there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Is there any last things you wanted to shoot the shit about, or?
I mean, no, not particularly. I just wanted to make sure I kind of said a little bit of something about your little the kind of things you had going, because I know like a lot of your like the podcasts, and like I've watched a few previous episodes just to get a feel for things, and it's either like I guess like folks in the community or close friends, and I did want to take the moment to just put it back on you and be like, the shit you're doing is like real good, and keep at it, because like I don't know if many people say that to you, but I definitely wanted to.
Oh, thanks, man. A lot of times I'm just sitting here plugging away, and the only time I can really tell is if an order comes through. Most of the time.
Certainly. Yeah.
But you ride road bikes, right? You're pretty into cycling.
Yeah, I ride fixed gear.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing too serious. I mean, I have like a Fuji fixed gear. Kind of got really into fixed gear riding when I was in Japan because despite it, like Tokyo at least being a hugely densely populated place, it's really good for bike riding. Like within the city, they have like an incredibly low traffic speed, so despite it being dense, you can actually get around fairly easily.
Right on.
And the biking culture in Japan, even if it's more casual or like less kind of like a stylistic choice and a very functional, just daily life kind of thing, like you'd see maybe in some European countries, like it's just everywhere. So it made it very easy to get into bike riding, and I still love riding fixed because it's just less to think about. Like I would love to have some incredibly hard out, carbon, carbon decked out like road bike or whatever to go on a 100-kilometer plus ride, but at the same time I love the simplicity and the, I don't know, the feeling that comes with riding a fixed gear bike, and it really makes you feel like a kid again, and I wish it was a little cheaper, but
yeah. Wow. I tried messing around on those before, and I can't. I like coasting too much, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I see like one. I don't know where in the United States they are, but there's I don't know if it's a collective or whatever called, is it FOAD? FOAD on YouTube, and they're like a fixed gear freestyle kind of collective or whatever. I mean, I think they like have their own merch or whatever, so I mean, sorry if I'm directing people to that, but but no, they got some cool stuff. But I see them like riding, I don't know what like the style of bike it is, but it's like it's between like a fixed gear road bike and a traditional BMX frame. Like it's like a large BMX, right? Kind of frame, and they're riding fixed and like doing tricks and like not like tail whips and crazy stuff like that, but bar spins and doing 180s and stuff like that. But like the fact that your pedals are locked and like you're just gonna do whatever your wheel does, it's like doing tricks on a BMX is like risky enough, but it's like let's add this element of your feet are gonna get ripped out from under you if you're not careful. It's pretty crazy, but I don't know, they make it look hella easy. And I'm happy to watch at a distance. I'm not out here doing tricks on my fixed gear.
Right on. Recently, I had this guy hit me up. He's from Baltimore, like a state south, and he's kitting out bikes for other people. So these are like bigger bikes. I guess they're usually like single speed. Some people call them like wheelie bikes because like you always see the kids in the neighborhood pedaling, like. But it was like the sprocket on the front was just one gear, but on the back he had a gear changer on everything, so it looked like a BMX bike front half, but in the back there was gears to change, and it was a BMX sprocket on the front, and I was like, I didn't even think you could do that. Holy shit, that's kind of cool. Like, but he hit me up to make the pad set to match the big kit, so I was like, all right, cool. So
damn, that's cool.
Yeah.
What do you think about the proliferation of like electric bikes and all that kind of stuff? Like,
if that's what people want to get into, I mean, you can't go into that just pretending it's going to be safe and gumdrops. You still gotta have your wits about you, because you can really get got. And I think being able to just walk on an electronic device, the comfort that just gave you might give you a little too much comfort when you have to swerve around something.
Exactly.
Did you see those like mono wheel things that they have?
Like what, like the hoverboard stuff that you stand on, or
it's like a hoverboard, except it's only one wheel, and there's like these little flippers that steel, like metal plates flip down, and you stand on it.
Yeah.
Like you stand on it and it just goes.
I have seen. Yeah, that's the kind of shit you would see in San Francisco.
Really?
Like you would have like your old school fixie goons, and then your tech bros with their like boosted boards, and then those like, you know, like you said, the crazy enhanced hoverboard type things.
Yeah.
It's like it looks like a mag wheel with like a place to stand on the side of it, right? Like it's this real intimidating looking.
Well, there's two. I've seen one where it looks like a skateboard with a giant wheel in the center. I've seen those. Those are more common. But what I am telling you about, I saw on YouTube. I went through this whole like, I was watching product reviews. I'm never gonna buy one. I just wanted to see how it worked because this dude was like explaining how rugged it was, and I actually liked the way it looked. Style wise, it was like a knobby tire with like this metal frame around it, like it's meant to be banged up. And oh my god, it looks like it's hard as shit to ride. And he's like purposely trying to make it mess up, and he's like tilting all kinds of crazy ways. And he like, there's like it had to have been some country, I forget where, but it was like a nice little water feature in the sidewalk, and he hopped it on one of these little mono wheel things.
Damn.
And he picks it up. He's like, this thing weighs 70 pounds. It's like, jeez. He goes down steps with it. I was blown away. Yeah, that's pretty intense. Like, I don't know. I would never consider myself like a risk seeking person, and when I see stuff like that, like, you know, I mean, there's one thing, it's like, oh, learning to, you know, do a kickflip or ollie off like a sidewalk. That's like, there's that, and then there's like the extreme of like, I'm gonna have this insane electric motor between my feet and, you know, go, I don't know how many kilometers an hour that thing would go, but more than it should, probably. It feels like. If you can trip and fall and bust your head open, you know.
Yeah, on a skateboard.
You can really get got, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, all right, Jonathan, I think it's probably time for me to head out, probably time for you to
of course.
Clean the kitchen or something, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, time to do the only thing I do on the weekend is just do some cleaning.
Nice. Get some zen time in, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wicked. Well, you know, appreciate the invite and having me on and having a chat. Like I said, after all these years, it's great to finally properly catch up.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
awesome.
I wanted to have a designer on. I'm like, who do I know? I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna ask that Jonathon guy. I wonder if he would be down, because like, you got some good takes on Twitter, man. I gotta say, I'm a fan. So.
Oh, I appreciate it. I try, but you know, I'm also trying to use Twitter less. So there's that.
Yeah, we're all trying to, right?
Agreed.
All right, man.
All right.
Take it easy.
Cool.
Take care.
Enjoy your evening, man.
You too. Thank you.
I need to break the code. Tell me where's the way into your heart and mind. I need a heart that's full and free from complication that absorbs my time. I need a hand to hold and 45,000 for impulsive buys. I don't wanna talk about it anymore. I find ways to get back what is owed to mine. Think I've got it back. Becoming something more, your natural instinct. I will take the lead. I talk about the paths of getting teams straight. I really am obsessed. nothing will break this spell. I wanna go out tonight. You see me wander, you see me care. Now that light stops spiraling, I wanna go out tonight. Bad ways, forget them. I wanna be yours. I wanna go out tonight.
Goth boy clip.
Now that life stops